Shedeur Sanders made one thing clear. He's not backing up anyone. Not even Lamar Jackson. That mindset, relayed through insiders close to the negotiations, reportedly halted a blockbuster deal before it could materialize. The Ravens, eager to secure Sanders as a long-term star, were willing to part with first-rounders, key defenders, and cash-rich assets. But Sanders' refusal to sit shifted everything, not just the trajectory of a trade, but how teams evaluate young quarterbacks with both swagger and standards.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The Browns, watching it unfold, chose to stand firm and bet on Sanders' future in Cleveland. The ripple effects go beyond roster decisions. This standoff revealed a growing trend in the NFL, wherein proven talent, if paired with the right media presence and personal brand, can change the direction of an entire franchise. Harbaugh may have stayed silent in public, but his interest signaled belief in Sanders as more than a project. It suggested a vision, a transition plan beyond Lamar, mirroring other generational quarterback handoffs. Meanwhile, the leak, possibly from Sanders' camp, did what it was meant to: increase visibility, stir debate, and remind the league just how valuable confidence can be when paired with raw talent. The Ravens went all in, over $100 million worth of picks, players, and future-building assets, all for one player, Shedeur Sanders. It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't some made-up rumor floating around Reddit. This was a real, strategic attempt to change the future of the franchise. And it all unfolded just before the Ravens were about to face the Browns. Talk about timing. The leak sent shockwaves across the league. One of the most tightly run franchises in football, Baltimore, was suddenly at the center of an aggressive, almost desperate move to secure a player who hadn't even proven himself in the league yet. And that player? The son of Deion Sanders, the quarterback who's been on everyone's radar since his first snap in college. Shedeur isn't just a prospect, he's a brand, and the Ravens knew it. But the headline wasn't just that Baltimore wanted him. The real drama came when Shedeur said no. The reported sticking point? He didn't want to sit, not even behind Lamar Jackson. Let's not downplay that. Lamar is the reigning face of the franchise, an MVP, a player whose playing style is uniquely his own and whose presence has defined the Ravens for years. And yet, here comes Shedeur Sanders, new to the league, drawing this much attention and standing his ground. He made it clear. He's not sitting, not learning quietly from the sidelines. He wants to start. Now. And that simple refusal to accept a backup role changed everything. It forced Cleveland to make a call. Would they cash in, take the historic offer, load up on picks, grab veteran players, and gamble on someone else in the next draft? No. They chose to keep him. It's easy to forget that, just a few years ago, the Browns were a franchise that cycled through quarterbacks like socks. They've been burned by hype before. They've overreached. They've passed on great talent. But in this moment, they didn't flinch. Despite an offer that most teams wouldn't even think twice about accepting, they held on to Shedeur. That speaks volumes. It wasn't just about potential anymore. It was about control. Identity. Quarterback stability is the backbone of any team in today's NFL, and Cleveland saw what they had: a leader in the making with confidence, poise, and massive upside. Now, the fact that Harbaugh refused to shut the rumor down only fanned the flames. He had the chance to say, "No, this didn't happen." He didn't. He had the chance to call it speculation. He didn't. Instead, during his press conference, he gave vague responses about the draft process, depth, and building for the future. Classic NFL coach deflection, yes, but also incredibly telling. NFL coaches don't talk about deals they're not serious about. They don't even hint. So when Harbaugh danced around the question instead of killing it, it told you everything. This wasn't some made-up drama. There were conversations. There was intent. The Ravens wanted Shedeur Sanders, and they were willing to pay big to get him. And then there's the timing of the leak. Right before a Ravens-Browns game? This felt coordinated. A power play. And many believe it didn't come from the Ravens or the Browns, but from Sanders' own camp. If that's true, it was a brilliant move. Because what better way to elevate your status than to have a legacy team publicly thirsting for you? Leaking the story forced the conversation. It boosted Sanders' value without him throwing a single pass that week. It placed him firmly in the spotlight, not as a rookie to watch, but as the future that teams are already fighting over. It also changes how other franchises view him. If the Ravens are willing to trade the farm, what are they seeing that everyone else should start noticing? That's leverage. That's strategic messaging. And in the NFL, perception shapes reality. Front offices aren't just evaluating tape, they're reading narratives. And the narrative now is this: Shedeur Sanders isn't a maybe. He's a must-watch, a must-plan for. A quarterback with the swagger and talent to lead a franchise, not eventually, but right now. And this idea that he's ready to lead today is exactly why the Ravens couldn't close the deal. They weren't looking to hand him the reins immediately. Not with Lamar still playing at a top level. The plan was clearly to let Shedeur develop, learn, and then take over when the time was right. But Shedeur doesn't operate on their timeline. He has his own. And the Browns, aware of that mindset, decided to bet on it. That's the core of this whole story. Confidence versus timing. Development versus immediacy. It's a standoff between what teams are comfortable with and what a player believes he deserves. And the Browns blinked less. But let's talk about what this says about team building in the NFL. Franchises now value quarterbacks like high-growth stocks. It's no longer about waiting for someone to prove themselves. It's about identifying upside early and being willing to overpay before the breakout. That's what Baltimore was trying to do. Lock in future dominance before the rest of the league caught on. It's what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. What the Packers did eventually with Love. It's all about staying ahead. But the difference here is the resistance. Shedeur didn't just want to be drafted and molded. He wanted to enter with expectations on his own terms. And that's new. Most young quarterbacks say they'll sit, say they'll learn. Shedeur made it clear. He's a starter or he's not interested. And by doing that, he forced the NFL to adapt to him, not the other way around. That kind of mindset is risky. It could backfire. But it also demands respect. It's not just a belief in talent. It's an understanding of value. So now, with the trade off the table, for now, the Browns are sitting on one of the league's most interesting assets. A player who could redefine what it means to be a rookie quarterback in a league still clinging to old models of development. And the Ravens? They showed their cards. Whether or not Lamar is their guy for 5 more years, they're clearly thinking beyond him. That's going to stick. Other teams saw it. Agents saw it. Future free agents saw it. The signal is out. Even the most stable teams are looking for the next one. Because in this league, you're only ever one decision away from a reset. And now the question becomes, does Shedeur reward the Browns' loyalty? Or does another opportunity come along that changes everything again? This story isn't over. The offer was made. It didn't happen. But the fallout is still unfolding. And it's only a matter of time before another team, with enough nerve and desperation, decides to test Cleveland's resolve again. Let us know. Should the Browns have taken the deal? Did Sanders make the right call? How do you think Lamar feels watching all of this play out in real time? Drop a comment below. Hit that like button if you're as deep in this rabbit hole as we are. And don't forget to subscribe so you're the first to hear when the next domino falls. Because in today's NFL, the real games are being played off the field. And this one is far from over. The NFL might pride itself on discipline, strategy, and tradition. But what just happened with Shedeur Sanders flipped all of that upside down. Because when a rookie quarterback, without a full pro season under his belt, becomes the centerpiece of a rumored $100 million offer from one of the most respected franchises in football, something fundamental shifts. And it's not just about hype. It's about power, leverage, identity. This wasn't just the Ravens kicking the tires on a promising young QB. This was Baltimore, a team that has built its brand on stability, defense, and calculated moves, trying to hijack the future. Quietly, aggressively, and just before game day. The reported offer? Massive. Staggering. A collection of multiple first-round picks, talented young defenders, and veteran assets. This wasn't just let's talk. This was we're serious and we're willing to pay. That kind of offer isn't made lightly, and certainly not leaked lightly either. And then you got John Harbaugh standing at the podium, being asked directly about it. What does he do? He doesn't confirm. He doesn't deny. He gives one of those carefully worded, media-trained responses about depth and process and future development. In other words, he says nothing, and by saying nothing, he says everything. Because if there hadn't been a deal on the table, the answer would have been a swift, "That's not true." No hesitation. No interpretation. But he left it hanging. Why? Because it kept the door open. Shedeur, and the timing couldn't have been more suspicious. Just before Ravens versus Browns, this leak drops into the news cycle like a hand grenade. And not from an anonymous fan blog or sketchy Twitter account, but with actual reporting suggesting that a real trade offer was very much alive. You don't need a PhD in media manipulation to figure out what was happening. Someone wanted this out there. And all signs point to Sanders' own circle. Because what better way to elevate his image, his brand, and his negotiation position than by tying his name to one of the NFL's most strategic franchises making a blockbuster move? The leak does the heavy lifting. It tells every other team, look who wants him. Look what they're willing to give. That kind of PR? You can't buy it. But you can leak it. And let's talk about the Browns here, because they had a decision to make. A massive offer. A chance to walk away with an unprecedented haul for a rookie. Picks for days. Win now talent. Future flexibility. And they said no. That's not just faith in Shedeur Sanders. That's conviction. They believe not only in his potential, but in the timeline he demands. Because let's not forget, Sanders didn't want to be stashed behind Lamar Jackson. He made it clear he wants to start immediately. He's not stepping into a developmental role. He wants the spotlight. He wants to lead. And the Browns didn't back off. They embraced it. That speaks volumes about what they're building internally. This isn't about babysitting a young QB or slowly easing him into the league. It's about letting a guy with a franchise mentality take over. It also shows a shift in how quarterbacks are being evaluated. For years, the model was sit and learn. Let the rookie observe. Let him adjust. Mahomes did it. Aaron Rodgers did it. That approach used to be gospel, but not anymore. Now, teams are looking for instant playmakers. Confidence is no longer a red flag, it's a green light. Shedeur's refusal to be a backup wasn't arrogance, it was a message. I'm ready, whether you are or not. And in an NFL obsessed with finding the next superstar before anyone else, that kind of clarity is intoxicating. It's why Baltimore made the move in the first place. They didn't just see a talented arm. They saw a future. A guy who could be the next face of the league. A quarterback who plays with composure, creativity, and edge. And they tried to get ahead of it before the rest of the league caught on. But it's also a huge statement about where the Ravens stand with Lamar Jackson. Let's be real. You don't offer that kind of package unless you're thinking beyond your current quarterback. And while Lamar is still elite, still an MVP caliber talent, the message behind the offer was clear. Baltimore's looking down the road. They were trying to thread the needle. Stay competitive now. Plan for later. It's not disrespect. It's strategy. We've seen it before. Rodgers and Love. Smith and Mahomes. The quiet succession plan. Slowly building until the torch gets passed. That's what Baltimore wanted with Shedeur. But Sanders wasn't interested in being part of someone else's timeline. He wanted to be the Shedeur. And here's where this story breaks out of the sports world and into something bigger. Because what we're seeing with Shedeur Sanders isn't just a trade that almost happened. It's a shift in how players take control of their own narratives, their own paths, their own value. This wasn't just about a football decision. It was about autonomy. Sanders, whether directly or through his team, sent a message. We're not waiting. We're not playing politics. We know the value, and we expect it to be met. And if it's not, the team that does meet it gets a quarterback who already sees himself as the franchise. That kind of clarity, before a single full NFL season, is rare. And while some might call it premature or overconfident, the Ravens didn't think so. They tried to make the move. They validated the mindset. And even when it didn't happen, the story changed everything. Now Shedeur walks into every conversation with leverage. Every future negotiation will be shaped by this offer. Every analyst, every scout, every coach who didn't take him seriously before, they're paying attention now. And the Browns, for better or worse, are now in a high-stakes situation. Because turning down a $100 million trade only works out if the player delivers. If Shedeur becomes the star they believe he can be, it's one of the gutsiest non-trades in recent NFL memory. A decision that reshaped their future. But if it doesn't pan out, if he stumbles or flames out or can't match the weight of the moment, then this will haunt the front office, the fans, the franchise. That's the risk they took by saying no. And it's a massive one. So where does this leave us? The trade didn't happen, but the power shift did. Sanders elevated himself without even changing teams. Harbaugh fueled speculation with silence. The Browns solidified their identity around a quarterback who's already rewriting the rookie playbook. And the rest of the league? They're watching, quietly, calculating, waiting for another opening. Because this story isn't over. It's only a matter of time before another team, desperate for a franchise quarterback, makes their own push. And when they do, the price just went up. Because now there's precedent. Now there's a baseline. And it starts at $100 million. At this point, it's hard to overstate just how rare this kind of moment is in the NFL. We're talking about a rookie quarterback, not a 10-year veteran, not a two-time Super Bowl champ, not even a proven starter, getting a rumored $100 million valuation in a serious trade conversation. And not just from any team, from the Baltimore Ravens. One of the most deliberate, tight-lipped, and long game-playing franchises in the league. They don't make headlines like this by accident. So when this report leaked, right before they were about to play Cleveland, people took it seriously. Because they know how the Ravens operate. If Baltimore is even entertaining this kind of offer, it's not just smoke. There's fire. Or, at the very least, a gas line ready to blow. And yet, the trade didn't happen. Because Shedeur Sanders said no to being a backup. Let that sink in for a second. A rookie quarterback, brand new to the NFL, still getting acclimated to the pro level, was essentially being groomed to become the future face of a legendary franchise. And he turned it down because he wants to start now. Not in a year. Not in 3 years. Right now. That's not just confidence. That's calculated, business-minded, full-throttle belief in who he is and what he's capable of. He didn't care that the starter in front of him is Lamar Jackson, a generational talent and league MVP. That didn't matter. Because for Sanders, the only option worth considering is QB1. And that response, that mentality, it flipped the entire situation on its head. Because now, it's not just a story about the Ravens swinging big and missing. It's a story about how Sanders controlled the conversation. The Ravens made the offer. The Browns considered it. But Sanders shaped the outcome. That's leverage most rookies only dream of having. And where did that power come from? Timing and narrative. Because whoever leaked this, whether it was Sanders' camp, a connected agent, or a third party with insider access, they did it perfectly. The leak came at a time when both teams were under the spotlight. A division game. A media-heavy weekend. And boom, suddenly the narrative shifts from Ravens versus Browns to who's going to land Shedeur Sanders. That is not a coincidence. That's PR strategy 101. And it worked. By the time kickoff rolled around, everyone from insiders to casual fans was asking the same questions. Was the trade real? Was Shedeur worth it? Would Cleveland fold? Was Baltimore crazy? It created chaos. Controlled, brilliant chaos. And that chaos changed the stakes for everyone. Let's start with the Browns. They held firm. Didn't blink. Passed on the picks. Passed on the veterans. Said no to one of the biggest hauls in recent trade history. That tells you everything about how they view Sanders. Because they didn't just see a valuable trade chip. They saw their future. A quarterback they're willing to build around. a leader they're willing to commit to, before the league has even had the chance to see what he truly is. But make no mistake, that's a huge gamble. Turning down an offer like this only works out if Sanders becomes a star. Not a decent starter. Not an above-average guy. A star. A Pro Bowler. A playoff-caliber quarterback who can lead a team for the next decade. Anything short of that, and this decision becomes an anchor. But for now, they're betting on belief. And then there's Baltimore. Where does a team like the Ravens go from here? You don't just casually toss out a $100 million trade package and walk away like nothing happened. This wasn't a flyer. This was a move. A real one. A strategic play for a player they clearly saw as the future of their franchise. That kind of clarity isn't easy to walk back from. So yes, Lamar Jackson is still that guy. He's still at the top of his game. Still putting up numbers. Still winning. But now, everyone knows the Ravens are thinking ahead. They're planning beyond Lamar. And they're willing to pay a premium to make sure that next chapter is locked in before the rest of the league even opens the book. That's not betrayal. That's football. The NFL has always been a ruthless, forward-thinking league. What have you done for me lately? Who's next? What's the plan after the plan? And this trade offer showed that Baltimore isn't waiting around for Father Time to start slowing Lamar down. They're already working on a succession. Shedeur. The twist, of course, is that the plan involved a player who's not interested in waiting for anything. Shedeur made it clear, publicly or not, that he's not here for a slow build. He's not following a script. And that's where this entire situation becomes a bigger reflection of how the league is evolving. Because the old model, draft a quarterback, sit him, coach him up, give him 3 years to learn, is dying. The new model? Walk and ready. Demand your shot. Take control of the narrative. We've seen pieces of that with players like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and even C.J. Stroud. But Shedeur? He's taking it to the next level. He's not just playing early. He's shaping where and how he plays before the depth charts are even finalized. That's a power shift. And the Ravens, usually ahead of the curve, got caught in the middle of it. Because they were ready to build around him. Not now, but soon. The succession plan was in place. The offer was made. But the player didn't want to follow the plan. So it crumbled. And now, the entire league is watching. Because this wasn't just about one trade. This was about setting a precedent. What does it take to get a rookie QB like Sanders? How early can a player dictate their role? And what happens when a franchise has to adjust to them, instead of the other way around? All of that was on full display in this saga. And even though the deal didn't go through, the damage, or depending on who you ask, the progress, is done. Shedeur's value has skyrocketed. Baltimore's future quarterback plans are now public. Cleveland's commitment is locked in. And the next time Sanders' name is brought up in trade talks, the baseline has already been set. You start at $100 million. Because anything less is already... So now the pressure is on. For the Browns, to prove they made the right call. For Sanders, to meet or exceed the massive expectations swirling around his name. For the Ravens, to either pivot quietly or come back with an even bolder move. Because this was more than a rumor. It was a warning shot. And now the entire league is recalibrating. So tell us, did Cleveland make the right call holding him? Should Baltimore have pushed harder? And will Shedeur live up to the hype he now carries, trade or no trade? Drop a comment below and give us your take. If you're just as glued to this story as we are, hit like, share it with someone who's deep into NFL trade theories, and subscribe for the next layer of drama. Because in today's NFL, the quarterback position doesn't just change teams. It changes the whole game.